Hey, everybody. So, during the Democratic debate on Thursday night, there was an exchange between Amy Klobuchar and Pete Buttigieg over who was the stronger supporter of press freedom. And Amy Klobuchar claimed that she had pressed Trump's attorney general nominees on whether they would abide by certain strictures governing the protection of journalists and so on and so forth. And then Pete somehow took offense to this because he thought that Amy Klobuchar was discounting his commitment to the First Amendment and so on and so forth. It was rather silly. But I just want to show you that clip here and then bring in a separate clip that more than underscores the silliness of this exchange.
Mayor Buttigieg, and then we're going to take a break.
I'm actually not worried about the president's bad sense of humor when it comes to being made fun of. I'm worried about the fact that he is echoing the vocabulary of dictators around the world. Yes. When the American president refers to unfavorable press coverage as the product of the enemy of the people, democracy around the world gets weaker. Freedom of the press, not just here at home, but around the world, gets weaker. It's one more reminder of what is at stake, not just here at home, but for world history, in the imperative that we win this election.
Could I respond?
This is our chance.
Very brief.
I just want to make very clear, Mayor, that the freedom of the press is deep in my heart. My dad was a newspaperman, and I am the one that asked every attorney general candidate we've had under Donald Trump, both of whom I opposed, about their respect for the First Amendment. And they have refused to follow the rules that Attorney General Holder put in place when it came to protecting our journalists. They would not commit that they wouldn't put a journalist in jail for doing their job. So this is not just talking points to me. This is the real world. And I think that experience that I will bring to the White House with protecting the First Amendment is worth more than any talking points.
All right, so there are Pete and Amy getting melodramatic about things. And while it is funny that every candidate clearly despises Pete, partly for the wrong reasons, frankly, I think they are offended that he was able to get as competitive as he appears to be now in a Democratic primary race without going through the ordinary channels and paying his dues and so on. But that is sort of a side issue. Why this is so ridiculous of a spectacle on their part is because while they were at this debate, Tulsi Gabbard was conducting her own event in New Hampshire. She was actually beaming into the New Hampshire event via video feed because she had to be in D.C. to cast votes. And an issue of press freedom did come up. And Tulsi once again mounted a defense of Julian Assange, someone whose press freedoms actually are being suppressed by the U.S. government, unlike, the cable news anchors and the elite journalists who kind of pretend that they're somehow under threat by Trump. I don't know that anybody who is like a chattering talking head on cable news who is really mean to Trump has been penalized using the official actions of the U.S. government since Trump assumed office, but Julian Assange has. He is now sitting in a prison in the United Kingdom because the U.S. unveiled charges against him under the Trump Department of Justice that would obviously be a horrible infringement on press freedoms, but that doesn't occur to most other candidates. Almost all of them, except Tulsi and Bernie, once he was finally pressured into it, have been silent on Assange. They don't view Assange's prosecution as having any meaningful bearing on press freedoms. So they have these kind of superficial debates over who can scream about how much they love the Constitution. Meanwhile, Tulsi is actually pointing to a case in which press freedoms are under attack in the form of Julian Assange. But Assange is toxic for most of the Democratic Party, especially people seeking the nomination, so they won't touch the issue. but Tulsi will. So I just want to give you that clip, and then you can kind of contemplate on that discrepancy between what she's saying and what the other Democratic candidates are saying in terms of who actually is attempting to further the interests of press freedoms in the United States. So here you go.
Nils Melzer, the UN Special Rapporteur on Torture, recently said that Assange is, quote, suffering extreme depression, extreme anxiety, and extreme levels of stress. And there's question about whether or not he's going to survive long enough to be extradited to this country. So my question is, what can be done to stop this assault on human rights before it's too late and he goes down as another victim of the same authoritarian practices that you're talking about?
Yeah. Well, thanks, Dak. You've been a very strong advocate in continuing to raise his plight and this issue. And I think it's important for us as we're talking about these Afghanistan papers that have just been released showing lies and fraud and deceit within our own government and what it has cost us, the American people, through lives and taxpayer dollars. We see how Julian Assange is being punished and treated so inhumanely for revealing and releasing information that has brought shame and embarrassment to people in our own government. That's really what it comes down to. So when we talk, and I've been outspoken about this both with you directly, Dak, as well as throughout the last several months, in how dangerous it is to see the freedom of the press so threatened. That what is happening to Julian Assange could happen to anybody. Anybody now, we have journalists like yourself and others who are using different platforms to be able to share and reveal information, to report on different events and facts. Anyone could be scooped up and charged and challenged in the way that Julian Assange is. And, I don't know offhand the legal remedies available to him. I know he's got attorneys who are working really hard for him, but I think it's doing exactly what you're doing, along with so many others, and continuing to push this issue to the forefront, to get more leaders within the world, as you mentioned and quoted, speaking out on his behalf, so that his situation can improve, and ultimately those charges should be dropped.